Some mornings change your whole day. Some mornings change your whole life. But the most legendary mornings, they change you. We live in a world where many people wake up to alarms, but very few wake up to awareness. We jump out of bed, scroll through our phones, chase the clock, and forget the most sacred moment of the day. The first moment, the moment when the soul is closest to silence, the heart is most honest, and God's whisper is the clearest. Tell me, how you start your morning, isn't it shaping the way you live your day? And if your day is how your life is built, then isn't your morning the construction site of your destiny? Today, I want to help you reclaim your mornings, not just to be productive, not just to be successful, but to be aligned with your inner purpose, your values, your peace, and your connection to God. A connection that is beyond religion, beyond rituals. A universal connection that makes you feel grounded and guided. Because if we start our mornings like ordinary people, we'll end up running after the world all day. But if we start our mornings like legends, we will walk with the world and still walk with peace. Begin with silence, not screens. Every morning, the first few minutes after you open your eyes are not ordinary. They are sacred. It is the moment when the mind is yet to be burdened by the world's noise and the soul is still wrapped in the silence of sleep. But sadly, what do most people do the moment they wake up? They stretch one hand for their mobile phone before they even stretch their spine. Notifications become the first words of the day, and social media becomes the first reflection they see. Instead of listening to the whispers of the soul, they tune into the chaos of the world. And in that one simple habit, the foundation of peace is replaced by pressure. Now imagine this. You wake up. Instead of reaching for your phone, you stay still. You become aware of your breath. You listen, not with your ears but with your inner stillness. You sit up slowly, and in that moment of silence, you whisper in your heart, "Thank you, God, for lies and for another day." That silent moment becomes your meeting with divine. That pause becomes your protection for the rest of the day. You have not yet entered the world, but you have already anchored yourself in something far more powerful than the world, your connection with the source. Legendary lives are not built by legendary actions alone. They are built by legendary awareness. And awareness comes from silence. Silence is not empty. It is full of answers. But we often miss these answers because we wake up and immediately try to fill the silence with stimulation. Music, news, reels, texts, and tasks. But real strength, real clarity, real direction comes from beginning the day without letting the world speak first. It comes from letting your soul speak first. Think of a glass of water filled with mud. If you stir it constantly, you can never see through it. But if you let it settle in silence, clarity will emerge. Your mind is that glass. Every morning, if you begin with stimulation, it's like stirring the mud. But if you sit in stillness, clarity rises, and the answers you've been chasing will begin to surface effortlessly. That clarity can help you decide how to respond to difficult situations, how to manage your emotions, and how to lead the day with purpose. Take a moment to reflect on this. Do you begin your morning with reaction or reflection? Because how you start determines how you respond to every challenge that day. A person who begins the morning by scrolling will likely carry other people's energies into their own day. But a person who begins in silence, with intention and grounding, carries their own energy. Rooted in strength, not swayed by noise. I once met a gentleman who had transformed his entire life just by changing how he spent the first 10 minutes of his morning. Earlier, he was a slave to the screen. He admitted that he'd wake up, scroll through the news, get anxious, compare himself to others on social media, and then drag himself through the day in a state of quiet frustration. But then he made a small change. He began setting his phone far away from his bed. When he woke up, he'd just sit still and listen to his breath's heart, to the silence. He began to feel calm, and within a few days, he noticed a difference. His days became more manageable, his focus improved, and surprisingly, his relationships started to feel deeper. Why? Because when you don't start the day with noise, you don't carry noise into your actions, words, or relationships. Spiritual traditions across the world, regardless of religion, emphasize one thing: the power of silence. Saints, sages, monks, and mystics have always spoken about the golden hour of the morning as a time when the veil between you and God is the thinnest. You don't need elaborate rituals. You don't need perfect chants. You just need sincerity. And silence is the most sincere offering of all. People chase motivation from videos, music, or speeches first thing in the morning, but they forget you don't need external fire when you have internal stillness. The fire that burns quietly inside a focused mind is far more powerful than the noise that screams from outside. In silence, you find your why. In silence, you hear your truth. In silence, you meet God, not through words, but through presence. So tomorrow morning, just try this. When you wake up, resist the urge to touch your phone. Instead, place your hand on your heart and breathe. Just breathe. For 5 minutes, say nothing. Listen to your breath. Feel your heartbeat. That's not just your body waking up. That's your soul preparing to lead. In those moments, you are not just awake. You are aware. And awareness is the mark of every legendary human being. Gratitude is the spiritual alarm clock. When the alarm rings in the morning, most people either groan, hit snooze, or rush out of bed already thinking about what's missing, what needs to be done, and what's going wrong in their life. But very few people pause to notice what's right. Very few people smile when they open their eyes and realize that they have been given something precious today. One more day, one more breath, one more chance to become the person they were meant to be. That's where the secret begins. Gratitude is not just an emotion. It's a spiritual awakening. It is the most powerful alarm clock for the soul. You see, life doesn't always give us everything we want. But if we learn to wake up and first notice what we already have, we train our minds to rise above scarcity and into abundance. Imagine two people waking up. The first one says, "Yue, I didn't sleep well. I have so much to do today. Why is my life so hard?" And the second one opens their eyes and says, "Thank you for this new day. Thank you for this bed, this breast roof, this chance." Both people face the same word, but only one will experience peace. Gratitude shifts the lens of the heart. It teaches you to see what is there instead of constantly focusing on what is missing. Most of the unhappiness in people's lives isn't because they lack something. It's because they overlook what they already have. A grateful heart doesn't just make your morning beautiful, it changes your relationship with the entire day. You start seeing people differently, handling problems with more calmness, and moving through your tasks with joy instead of stress. I remember speaking to a young woman who told me that every morning her life felt like a storm. She was overwhelmed by work, by family responsibilities, by personal health issues. She said, "I feel like I wake up every day already tired." I asked her a simple question: "Do you say thank you for anything in the morning?" She looked confused. "What is there to be thankful for?" She replied, But then I guided her to start small. I told her, before even getting out of bed, just say thank you for your breath. Then thank you for the pillow beneath your head. Then the fact that you woke up, that your heart is beating, that your body is still working, that you still have today. At first, she found it strange. But within a week, something shifted. She said to me, I still have the same problems, but now I don't feel crushed by them. I feel like I have strength, because I'm not starting my day empty anymore. I'm starting it full. This is the power of gratitude. It fills you up from the inside before the world can empty you out. It reconnects you with the present moment, where God is always present. You don't need to wait for something big to be grateful. The smallest things. Warm water, sunlight on your face, the quiet in your room, the smile of someone you love, are actually the biggest gifts when your heart is awake enough to notice them. You don't need a big ceremony. Just wake up and speak softly in your heart. Thank you. Let those words become your first prayer of the day. Let them come before your to-do list, your complaints, your worries. You'll be surprised how different your day feels when your first words are filled with grace instead of grumbling. The truth is, God doesn't need our gratitude, but we do. Gratitude doesn't change what we have. It changes how we see what we have. And that shift is what brings peace. I once heard a wise person say, it's not happy people who are grateful. It's grateful people who are happy. Think about that. Most people wait for something good to happen before they feel thankful. But legendary people train themselves to feel thankful first. And then good things naturally follow, because gratitude is like a magnet. It attracts peace, clarity, and even more blessings. Imagine if your first 5 minutes every morning became your sacred gratitude ritual. No need for elaborate routines. Just a deep breath and a deeper thank you. Every single morning is a new chapter of life. You have no idea what's going to happen that day. But you can decide how it begins. Not with fear, not with frustration, but with faith. So tomorrow when you open your eyes, don't just wake up. Lift up. Lift your heart. Smile even if nothing seems perfect. Because that smile is a declaration that you are alive, that you are aware, that you are connected to something greater than any problem you'll face that day. Move your body, awaken your soul. We often separate the body and the soul as if they belong to different worlds. But in truth, they are partners on the journey of life. The body is the vehicle and the soul is the traveler. And every morning, that vehicle needs to be awakened with care. When you move your body, you don't just stretch your muscles, you stretch your awareness. You bring life into stillness, rhythm into silence, and energy into intention. Movement is not just physical, it is deeply spiritual. A lazy body often becomes a lazy mind, but a body in motion awakens a mind in focus. Think about this. How do most people begin their day? They sit, scroll, slouch, and snooze. Then they wonder why their mind feels foggy, their motivation feels low, and their heart doesn't feel excited about the day. But have you ever noticed how your energy shifts even after 5 minutes of conscious movement? A simple walk, some stretches, deep breathing, or even dancing alone in your room, it changes something inside. It clears the stagnancy that sleep leaves behind. It reminds the soul that it's time to rise. When you move your body with awareness, you are telling your inner self, I am ready. Ready to show up for life. Ready to face challenges. Ready to serve, to smile, to grow. Movement becomes your morning declaration. It is a statement to God, to life, and to yourself that you are not starting the day unconsciously. You are stepping into it with purpose. I met a man once who told me he felt stuck in life. Like every day was the same and nothing made him feel alive. I asked him what his mornings looked like. He said, I wake up, drink tea, and then sit at my computer for hours. That was it. No movement, no awareness, no transition from sleep to wakefulness. I encouraged him to start his day by walking barefoot in his garden for 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. No phone, no music, just his body and nature. After a week, he said to me, something is different. I feel more connected, more awake. I actually look forward to my mornings now. And he didn't change his job or his routine. He just moved his body in silence, and that woke up his soul. You don't need a gym. You don't need fancy clothes or equipment. What you need is presence. You could stretch your arms toward the ceiling and breathe deeply. You could stand on your balcony and feel the morning breeze against your face. You could walk in circles in your room with a peaceful mind and a grateful heart. The magic is not in the size of the movement. It is in the sincerity behind it. Our bodies are temples, temporary homes for the eternal soul. And when we care for the temple, we respect the presence of the divine within it. Every movement, when done with mindfulness, becomes a prayer. The bending of the spine, the expansion of the chest, the feeling of the heartbeat. These are all ways in which the soul experiences life through the body. When you ignore the body, you dull the senses. But when you honor it through movement, you brighten your awareness. There is an ancient wisdom that says, when energy doesn't move, pain accumulates. When breath doesn't flow, emotion becomes stuck. And when the body becomes inactive, the soul feels imprisoned. Movement sets all of this free. It doesn't matter if you're young or old, fit or unfit. Movement is not about how fast you run or how much you lift. It's about how consciously you move and how deeply you connect through that movement. Some of the greatest sages didn't sit still all day. They walked, they worked, they moved with presence. Their body was active, but their mind was at peace. That is the balance we must seek. A body that flows like a river and a mind that remains still like a mountain. Every morning, before the world demands your attention, give some attention to your body. Stretch with reverence. Walk with gratitude. Breathe with awareness. Let your body become a bridge between your inner world and the outer one. Let it carry your intentions into action. Let it remind you that being alive is already a gift, and movement is how you say thank you for that gift. Tomorrow, when you wake up, don't just rush. Don't just scroll. Pause. Breathe, move. It could be a few gentle stretches. It could be 10 mindful steps. It could be a simple flow of breath in harmony with your limbs. Whatever you choose, do it with full presence. That small act will change everything. You will not just be awake, you will be alive. Feed the mind before feeding the mouth. Every morning, millions of people around the world wake up and rush straight to the kitchen, thinking of what to eat. Breakfast has been promoted as the most important meal of the day. And yes, nourishing the body matters. But in the race to feed the stomach, we often forget something even more important: feeding the mind. And the truth is, no matter how healthy your breakfast is, if your thoughts are filled with anxiety, negativity, and stress, the day will still feel heavy. Before you eat with your mouth, eat with your mind. Feed it inspiration. Feed it clarity. Feed it truth. That is how legendary mornings are made. Just imagine waking up and letting the first thing that enters your mind be a complaining, I didn't sleep well, or I have so much to do, or why is life so difficult? These thoughts are like junk food for the soul, easy to consume, but deeply damaging in the long run. But now imagine this instead: you wake up, sit quietly, and choose to read or listen to something that uplifts your mind. A few powerful lines of wisdom, a story of someone's strength, a reflection on purpose. That becomes your mental breakfast, a meal not for your body, but for your character. That kind of beginning builds resilience for the rest of the day. I met a school teacher once who told me she was struggling to remain patient with her students. Every little thing frustrated her. Her mornings were rushed and reactive. When I asked about her routine, she said, "I wake up late, grab a quick bite, scroll through some news, and head to class." I encouraged her to take just 5 minutes each morning to feed her mind before doing anything else. Read something that made her feel calm, reflective, and connected to her deeper self. After a few weeks, she smiled and said, "It's strange. My mornings haven't become longer, but they've become lighter. I don't feel drained by noon anymore. I feel anchored." That's the power of feeding your mind first. Most of us are consuming mental content all the time without realizing it. But what you feed your mind determines the quality of your emotions, your conversations, and your choices throughout the day. If you wake up and read negative headlines, compare yourself to others online, or fill your thoughts with fear, then your mind starts the day in survival mode. But if you begin by nourishing your intellect and spirit with something sacred, then your mind steps into creation mode, ready to contribute, grow, and uplift. You don't need hours. Even 2 or 3 minutes of intentional reading or listening can be powerful. Keep a book of spiritual reflections near your bed, or a small journal where you've written lines that lift your spirit. Or set a playlist of mindfulness or divine thoughts that make you feel grounded. This doesn't have to belong to any religion. It only has to belong to your growth. There's a beautiful analogy in nature: before the flower blooms, it must face the light. Similarly, before your outer life blossoms, your inner thoughts must be warmed by wisdom. You can't expect a peaceful day when you've started it with chaos. And you can't expect focus when the first thing your mind consumes is distraction. Feeding the mind is not just about knowledge. It's about reminding yourself of who you are beyond your titles, deadlines, and responsibilities. You are a soul on a journey. You are a spark of the divine. You are not what the world says about you. You are what God planted inside you. That identity becomes strong when you feed it daily with the right thoughts. Some people say, "I don't have time in the morning for reflection." But the real question is not whether you have time, but whether you can afford the cost of not doing it. A chaotic mind costs more time later through poor decisions, emotional reactions, and wasted energy. A few minutes of morning nourishment for the mind can save hours of confusion later. I remember once being in a village where a farmer would begin every morning by reading one line from a spiritual poem before tending to his fields. When asked why, he said, "The land needs water, but the farmer needs wisdom." That was his truth. He understood that before feeding his crops, he had to feed his consciousness. So the next time you rise, don't just ask, "What will I eat?" Ask, "What will I think? What will I choose to plant in my mind today?" Because your mind is like a garden. If you don't plant flowers intentionally, weeds will grow automatically. Don't let the world decide your thoughts. Feed your mind the way a master feeds a precious animal. With attention, with love, and with care. Reflect, don't react. Most people wake up and immediately enter a mode of reaction. The alarm rings and they react with annoyance. A message pops up on their phone and they react with anxiety. A task is remembered, and they react with stress. The day hasn't even properly begun, and yet their minds are already flooded with emotion. They haven't taken a moment to anchor, to reflect, to decide how they want to live this day. They are simply swept away by everything around them. But the most peaceful and powerful people are not those who live in constant reaction. They are those who take time to reflect before responding. Reflection is the art of asking yourself the right questions before the world pulls you into its chaos. It's the gentle moment when you look inward before you look outward. It's that sacred pause where you gather yourself before the world demands pieces of you. When you wake up and give yourself even 5 minutes of inner reflection, you are saying, "Let me decide how I will carry myself today. Let me choose how I will think, speak, and act, not based on mood, but based on meaning." Reactivity is living autopilot. It means your emotions are controlled by your environment. Someone says something rude and you become angry. A delay happens and you become frustrated. A plan goes wrong and you feel defeated. In this state, you are not living. You are just being pushed around by life. But reflection brings power back to your hands. It allows you to pause, breathe, and ask, is this worth my energy? What would the wiser version of me do here? How can I handle this with dignity, not just impulse? I once spoke to a man who was constantly exhausted. Not physically, but mentally. He said, "It feels like the whole world is pushing me all day long. My kids, my job, my phone. Everything needs my response immediately." I asked him if he had a practice of reflection in the morning. He said, "No, I just wake up and go straight into the rush." I encouraged him to take just 5 minutes after waking up. No phone, no to-do list. Just sit, close his eyes, and ask himself, "How do I want to show up today?" Within 2 weeks, he came back and said, "It's like I found space inside my head. I feel calmer even when things are chaotic. I respond slower, but with more clarity." That's the magic of reflection. It doesn't make life perfect, but it makes you prepared. It doesn't stop the noise, but it teaches you how to rise above it. When you reflect, you build a gap between stimulus and response. And that gap is where wisdom lives. That gap is where peace lives. That gap is where God can whisper to you, "Respond with love, not ego. Choose patience, not pride. Breathe, not burst." Reactivity comes from a restless mind. Reflection comes from a rooted mind. That's why stillness is so powerful in the morning. Even if your life is busy, even if your schedule is tight, give yourself those few minutes to sit in quiet and align your inner compass. Your reflection doesn't have to be long. It just has to be real. You could sit and ask yourself one simple question: who do I want to be today? Not what you want to do, but who you want to be. Calm, kind, focused, grateful. That inner decision will shape every outer action. Many times, we see people who lose their temper in traffic, lash out over small things, or sink into sadness over minor disappointments. These are not signs of bad people. They're signs of unprepared minds. Just like we charge our phones every morning, we must also charge our minds. With awareness, with presence, with reflection. Otherwise, we'll run all day on a low battery, reacting to everything and regretting most of it. Reflection also deepens your relationship with God. When you sit in silence and think about your life, your intentions, your patterns, you begin to notice what needs healing, what needs growth, and what needs letting go. And in that sacred noticing, you become available to grace. You become a student of your own soul. And that's a far more powerful education than anything the outside world can offer. There's an old saying, you cannot pour clean water into a dirty cup and expect purity. If your mind is already filled with yesterday's stress, today's worry, and tomorrow's pressure, then whatever peace you try to pour in will not last. But reflection is how you empty the cup. It's how you clean the inside, and once the mind is clear, peace can stay longer. Tomorrow morning, before anyone else's voice enters your ears, let the voice within speak first. Sit, breathe, and reflect. Ask, what really matters today? What am I grateful for? What is God teaching me right now? These simple questions invite powerful answers. And those answers shape your behavior, your mood, your choices. Because you were not born to live in reaction. You were born to live with reason, with wisdom, with stillness. And reflection is the doorway to all of that. It is not a waste of time. It is how time becomes meaningful. Speak to God before you speak to the world. The world is full of voices. Messages, notifications, emails, calls, opinions. They come at us before we've even brushed our teeth. And sadly, we give those voices priority. We let the world speak to us before we have even taken a moment to speak to the one who gave us this day. But what if, just for a few sacred moments each morning, we reversed the order? What if, before we spoke to anyone, friends, family, coworkers, we spoke to God? Speaking to God doesn't need fancy words or rehearsed prayers. It only needs sincerity. It is simply a moment of opening the heart and aligning yourself with the source that knows you better than anyone else ever will. When you speak to God first thing in the morning, something shifts inside you. The day no longer feels like a burden. It begins to feel like a blessing. You don't start the day chasing things. You start it in trust. You don't begin with fear, begin with faith. And that one small shift changes everything that comes after. Most people, as soon as they wake up, go straight into the rush of life. They check their phones. They scan their schedules. They worry about what needs to be done, what might go wrong, and what others might think. But those who begin their morning by turning inward, by speaking softly to God, enter the day with a different energy. They are not frantic, they are focused. They are not stressed, they are centered. They are not lost, they are led. I once met a woman who had the most graceful aura. No matter what was happening around her, deadlines, drama, difficulties, she carried herself with peace. Curious, I asked her, "What's your secret?" She smiled and said, "I never begin my day without first checking in with God." She explained that before she looked at the world, she closed her eyes and spoke from her heart. Some days she spoke words of gratitude. Some days she asked for strength. Some days she simply said, "Stay with me today." And that inner connection became her anchor. You see, the world can be unpredictable. No one knows what a day will bring. It could be joyful or heavy, smooth or stormy. But when you speak to God first, you don't need to know what will happen, because you remember who is walking with you. That is the power of beginning the day in divine dialogue. It's not about getting all the answers. It's about remembering that you are not walking alone. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Even a few whispered sentences from your soul are enough. When you wake up, before you even sit up, place your hand on your heart and silently say, "Thank you for this breath. Guide me today. Help me act with love. Keep my heart steady. Stay close." That's it. These words are more powerful than any motivational quote or morning podcast. Because they're not just inspiring, they're connecting. And connection with creates confidence that no external voice can shake. We spend so much time worrying about how we appear to others. how we speak, how we dress, how we perform. But the truth is, how we begin our relationship with God each morning shapes all our other relationships. When your first conversation is with God, you become more patient with your children, more graceful with your partner, more composed at work, because you are filled not by ego, but by essence. There's a beautiful example from nature. The lotus flower blooms in the morning, not because the world tells it to, but because the sun touches it first. In the same way, when the light of God touches your heart first thing in the morning, you bloom naturally. You open with ease. You rise, not with force, but with flow. We often underestimate the power of small, sacred acts. But speaking to God in the morning is like tuning a musical instrument before a performance. If the strings are not tuned, the entire performance sounds off, no matter how skilled the musician is. Your heart is that instrument. And morning prayer, no matter how short, is how you tune it. Some might say, I don't know what to say to God. But the truth is, it's not about the perfect words. It's about showing up. You don't have to sound holy or wise. You just have to be real. Speak like you're speaking to your closest friend, your highest teacher, your most patient listener. Say what's on your mind. Say what's in your heart. Say it with honesty. God doesn't need eloquence. He values authenticity. And once this becomes your habit, once you start every morning speaking to the divine, your life will begin to feel less like a struggle and more like a partnership. You won't feel like you're carrying everything alone. You'll move with quiet confidence, knowing you're being guided, protected, strengthened from within.